Bernie Sanders put me forward for the policy drafting committee. He was allocated 5 slots. The DNC has 5 slots, and the DNC and the Clinton are one and the same, so Clinton had 6, but that's 11 for Clinton. And he told, I believe, the DNC that he'd like to have me. They said, we can't have her because she's from labor. That's the excuse they used.
So they actually said that the reason they couldn't have you was you were from labor.
Yeah, and they actually told the press that as well. Yesterday they told the Washington Post that, and I believe Politico, and the Wall Street Journal. So what's really the most tragic about it, besides the fact, I mean, I'm not surprised. I would have fought hard, and I wouldn't have kept everything inside. It wouldn't have been an insider's game. I would have been talking to the press. I would have been talking to the American public about the critical need for health care, for Medicare for all, single payer, which Clinton has denounced. And which is horrible, because that means when you denounce single payer, you're saying that there's lives in the balance. You're saying that people's lives don't count. That's what you're saying there. So what happened was they said they didn't want someone from labor, and the critical point here is there's 15 people in this drafting committee. They chose someone who I believe is a retiree from AFSCME,
So he's the only other union person on this entire committee, drafting committee.
Yes, and you think about how bad the DNC actually is, because working people built this country. They built the Democratic Party, and now they think it's overrepresented with one person. It's really outrageous, and it's a slap in the face to the American people, and it's why the Democratic Party is losing so many people, and will continue to lose them, frankly. I'm not personally offended. Frankly, I take it as a compliment.
I mean, you think it's because of your political views, obviously, that they didn't want you there?
Well, the DNC, I'm very clear about the fact that I think that the DNC has done extremely inappropriate elections across the country. They've been rigged, and they've...
Now, in Nevada, I mean, what happened in Nevada? Because, I mean, I heard at the casinos that they threatened to arrest your members who were in the caucuses. I mean, is that true? No,
it was very hostile. The other thing that happened is casino owners actually marched workers in to vote for Clinton. I mean, the corruption that the nurses saw there just shocked them. They documented it in a 65-page document in terms of what the kind of irregularities and corruption. So basically, the Democratic Party has taken working people for granted, and the unions forever. I mean, for so long now. If you look at the drafting committee of the platform, it's mostly corporate. So the corporate class controls both parties. That's clear. And the truth of the matter is, they're unabashed. They're not even embarrassed about it anymore. I think that's what this symbolizes more than anything, is the fact that they think that basically pushing labor aside is okay. It's become okay. And that tells you everything of why the Democratic Party isn't okay.
Where would the Clinton campaign be if there weren't unions around the country? The majority of unions are actually giving her money and organizing their members to support her. Would she be a front runner at this point?
No, the unions actually made the Clinton campaign viable.
Well, if we get Trump, you think that they'll be held responsible for that?
I think the superdelegates are going to be held responsible, because if they don't vote for Bernie Sanders, they're essentially handing Trump the election. Because only Bernie, it's clear, poll after poll after poll, Bernie Sanders is a candidate who can beat Donald Trump. Only Bernie Sanders.
Now, Bernie has said that the issue of the emails and her failure to secure it, having her own private email, is something that he is not concerned about. Are you concerned about it?
Bernie actually has changed his position on that. He thinks that this is seen in a new light now, and so I think that recently when he's talked on that, he's said different things. I'm expecting any morning to wake up and see a whole game change in this country. I never know what I'm going to see in the morning.
Do you think that they would indict her or charge her after the convention? I mean, it seems like...
No,
it seems like bizarre. And you have her elected.
I think we're in the most unstable electoral time in history.
And the rise of open racist, a right-winger who attacks women, attacks blacks, attacks Latinos, and yet is being broadcast as a legitimate candidate. What do you think about what Trump means for the American working people in the future of the United States?
The working people are angry. They're disenfranchised. They don't have jobs. They don't have health care. They can't put their kids through college. They're mad, and they want to take it out on someone. Trump gives voice to that hatred, and they've got the wrong, unlike the Bernie supporters, they've got the wrong target. basically they're blaming ethnic minorities. That's crazy. It really I validate their anger, but they have they're mad at the wrong people. Well, actually, they're mad at some of the right people, because honestly,
Well, Trump talks about the corruption too. He gave money to these corrupt people, including Clinton. So people love that kind of.
They do love that, and the problem is other than Bernie, there's no moral compass in this election, right? And so, we're supposed to vote for the lesser of two evils. That's what's being presented to us by the mainstream media. We're actually going to go to Philadelphia. We're going to fight like hell to make Bernie the candidate. So.
And your union has been involved in efforts for a labor party in this country. You think that there's more movement towards a labor party in this country as a result of what's going on in the Democratic Party?
The National Nurses United was not involved in the Labor Party. Years ago, the California Nurses Association certainly was involved in the formation of a Labor Party. And I think after November, we'll see how this trajectory works out, because it's premature, because we want Bernie Sanders to be the candidate of the Democratic Party. If workers and independents are further disenfranchised, we're not going to cede this to the right, and so we're going to look for the logical solution. If that logical solution could be anywhere. What it's got to be, though, it's got to be movement-based. It's got to be movement-based, and that's what we have a People's Summit in Chicago, June 17th through the 19th. We've got, all the Bernie, major support from the campaign of Bernie Sanders. The speakers, Tulsi's going to be there, Tulsi Gabbard's going to be there, Nina Turner's going to be there. It's kind of, the most vocal people on that campaign. And we're going to be talking about where do we go from here, what does that look like?
The media, the role of the media in supporting Clinton, what is your assessment of media in this country, the corporate media, and how they are framing the election?
The media, the same people who own the Clinton campaign own the media and own the DNC. It's pretty simple and it's pretty clear. I think what's great about this campaign is it's exposed all of that. I need to get her out of here.
What do you think the reasons were that the Democratic leadership excluded National Nurses United, Ann De Moro, Executive Director, from the Platform Committee? What were the reasons, and what do you think about it?
I was not in the room. I don't know the reasons why. Clearly, I think that she should have been at that table. She should have had a seat at the table. I know Bernie wanted her to have a seat at the table, and the difference that it could make would have been tremendous, to not only be a voice for labor, but to be a voice for the people and all that the nurses have been fighting for throughout this entire election and beyond.
So we put together this number. It's a melody we all know and cherish. So we'll give you one more. Bankers better watch out. They better take note. We're taking to the streets and we're gonna go vote. The Bernie bus is coming to town. He's making a list, making healthcare free, wiping out debt and taxing Wall Street. The Bernie bus is coming to town. He's been free. How the 1% takes most. He's gathering a movement now, so let's go from coast to coast. Oh, bankers better watch out. They better take note. We're taking to the streets and we're gonna go vote. The Bernie bus is coming to town. Two more, come on. The Bernie bus is coming to town. Where are we going? The Bernie bus is coming to town.
My name is Martha Kuhl, and I'm a registered nurse with National Nurses United. And we came out early with, in last August, are endorsed after a poll of our nurses. We came out in favor of Bernie Sanders for president because Bernie was expressing his values, and our values are the same as Bernie's. He has stood up for Medicare for all. It's very important to us as nurses. Every day on our job, we see patients who don't get the care they need, and healthcare should be a human right. He also speaks about income inequality, and certainly that contributes to illness in our society. So we are thrilled to work on this campaign. And once we endorsed him last year, we never stopped. We just have kept going. And he has made amazing progress. And we're in it to win it, and we're going to win California.
Now, your union, I mean, the CNA, before you became NNU, had a record of activist stuff, particularly with Schwarzenegger. Mm-hmm. You followed him around the state, and your union seems to have been quite active nationally, even when larger national unions have not seemed to mobilize their forces like the nurses. What's going on? I mean, like CWA, my union, and other unions which have far more members and resources haven't done the same kind of organizing that your union has done. How do you explain that?
You mean organizing for Bernie or organizing?
Organizing and getting people out and just...
Yeah. Well, I think it really is that our calling is to take care of patients, and our calling requires us to advocate for patients. And you can't just advocate for patients at the bedside. Healthcare doesn't just happen in a hospital. Health is something that's with us. We would hope to have it with us at all times. And so we advocate for patients in our communities, and we also have to advocate for patients in the legislature, and we've had to advocate for patients with friends and families. Because it's not a human right here. And I think that ties us to a larger struggle for social justice.
And were you surprised that your executive director, Ann DeMoro, was prevented from being on the platform committee? It was one person that was requested by the Bernie Sanders campaign to be placed on the committee. Why the fear of Ann DeMoro?
I was actually not surprised that the DNC would reject Roseanne. I think that the DNC is actually afraid a little bit of democracy, of what's really going on in the Sanders campaign. People all across this country supporting Bernie Sanders are rising up on behalf of many different issues, making our society more just. And Roseanne and the nurses, National Nurses United, are at the forefront of a struggle for a more humane society. And so their candidate, or the candidate that the DNC would like to be, and much of the media has coronated already, is Clinton, and she hasn't been on the side of social justice. We were not surprised.
Now, there have been rallies all over the country, 10, 20, 30,000, 40,000 people throughout the United States for Bernie Sanders, and yet the Clinton campaign haven't had these big rallies. What is going on? And yet she seems to be the candidate that has the most number of delegates at this point?
Well, you have to remember that the delegates, she has the most number of delegates because people are saying the superdelegates have already voted. Well, they haven't, and they're not going to vote, and they haven't voted, and it's just essentially a poll. We think that Bernie can win in California and many of the other states, and we think that what he represents and what he represents about his values and what he's spoken to really addresses needs in our communities, in our society. Income inequality, money in politics, health care for everyone, the environment, a very bad criminal justice system, ending racism, all those issues. He is speaking to the hearts and minds of so many people who have never been involved in politics before, and they are rising up. It's really exciting.
And, I mean, young people seem to see him as some hope. They have some hope of college or the things that he's talking about. What is going to happen if Bernie is not the candidate? Do you think these young people and others are going to vote for Clinton?
We're not even going to talk about that. As nurses, we don't give up on our patients, and we're not going to give up on our country. We are in it to win it.
And Trump is going to be at San Jose today. He's been continuing to attack people because of their nationality. He called a federal judge, a Mexican because he had a Mexican name. I mean, there seems to be a lot more overt racism and very dangerous kind of reactionary statements from him. What does that say about the political system in this country that a major candidate is openly attacking people because of their race or nationality or religion?
Frankly, it truly scares me that anyone would support Trump after the statements he's made. He is He is very divisive. He's incredibly racist, and we cannot afford to have a president like him.